All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the brain injury discussion. This is Jay, and today we're going to be revisiting the subject of alcohol and how it either causes or affects brains. And I foresee this being a very interesting conversation. Again, we're making a lot of the same points as the last time we talked, but we're going to have some visuals to probably make it a better experience. That way, you're just not listening to just me talk, but you can see the visuals to kind of connect that. And that is actually something that our brains really appreciate, especially when we're making a presentation, a visual. And again, like always, I would appreciate a like, a comment, a subscription, and sources will be in the description below as well as the end. And we're going to get into um, alcohol and brain injuries, which again, we've touched on before, but maybe we can retouch on this. Maybe this is something we should talk a little bit more about. So, that being said, let's get into it. And so, what is alcohol? Well, what do we know about alcoholic beverages? Um, well, we know that it is legal after your 21st birthday. I mean, all of this can be purchased at probably the nearest gas station, some of your grocery stores. Uh, a lot of places carry this. And so, all this you can purchase with your own money after you turn 21, unless you live in one of the very few dry counties in the United States. And again, dry means no alcohol. No alcohol is allowed to be sold. So, again, most of the time, it's perfectly legal as long as you're in the after the 21st birthday. We know it as a cause or an additional factor of brain injuries. So, not is it just a cause, it can be one of those factors that if it wasn't there, shall we say, you might not have gotten that brain injury. So, there's a lot of correlations that are present between brain injury and alcohol, and even alcohol abuse. And so when we're talking about this subject, we need to keep in mind that this is not a requirement to drink. It's not a requirement to consume alcoholic beverages, although it is legal, but certainly not advisable, especially if you already have a brain injury. So that being said, those are some basic facts. And I can't stress this enough. I will not recommend anyone use alcohol, especially someone with a brain injury. But with that being said, let's move forward. Let's find out. So let's look at alcohol as a cause of a brain injury. And of course, as we can see in this graphic here, driving under the influence. Now, again, driving under the influence doesn't always have to be alcohol related. It could be related to other things that make you intoxicated. This could include marijuana. This could include medications, like medications that your doctor prescribes you. They might have a warning saying don't drive or operate heavy machinery when you're doing this, and obviously you should take that advice. You should not be under the influence when you are operating a multi-ton vehicle, or even in this case, this little car here weighs probably over a ton, and it can be very dangerous and thus lead to DUIs and accidents and so on and so forth. So again, we're looking at alcohol as a cause of brain injury, and driving and drinking is not a good mix. I do not recommend it. Um, we talk about excessive alcohol intake. So this can go to a point where you might get an injury, not just from what happens because of your alcohol intake, because of your inhibition being um, restricted, your executive functioning being limited. Excessive alcohol intake can cause something like a seizure. That can cause you to have some sort of mess in your brain. And again, alcohol is a natural toxin to the brain, so we should be careful. If you are legally doing this, you should maybe not go to the extreme with it. Again, alcohol also has withdrawal symptoms, especially in the most severe cases. Those withdrawal symptoms, especially with alcohol, are very pernicious in nature. And in some cases, there will be what's called a dependency. So the withdrawal symptoms are basically the brain and all its wonderful goodness um, after prolonged excessive alcohol intake will start showing withdrawal symptoms. And that could be irritability, that could be shakiness, that could be any number of things. and physical consequences to that. And again, um, that it's something that, you don't have to participate in. Remember, it's not a requirement to drink alcohol. What we do know about alcohol is that it does impair your cognitive abilities and it makes falls and concussions more probable. Now, again, I have to stress it makes them more probable, which means that if you are under the influence and you're climbing up a ladder, chances are you're more likely to fall than if you didn't have that. Now, again, it's because of what it does to the brain. So, because of the impaired cognitive abilities, it makes it more probable that something bad will happen. And of course, I talk a lot about prevention. We don't want bad things to happen to people. So again, big stressor. You're not required to drink, and you must do so legally after the age of 21. And you get the gist. Alcohol is a possible cause of a brain injury. So when we look at that, we should definitely be thinking, okay, maybe we should control, maybe do it in a safe location if you do decide to consume alcohol. So again, things to think about. And so we talk a lot about alcohol, and maybe we should talk about prevention. Maybe we don't want someone to get to that point where they require it due to their severe withdrawal symptoms, which again, alcohol dependency, it can be medically needed for the body to properly function in its most extreme ways. But then again, there are withdrawal symptoms. There are consequences to this. So let's start young. Let's start with the youth. We start with younger populations, and what they have found is that when you involve the family, so that family dynamic, and that's very important to the brain, but it's also important to what goes on inside the thinking of the brain, especially the executive functioning. This family dynamic might help, or if we flip it, it might hurt. But when we're talking prevention, let's get the family involved. Let's teach the family what the dangers are. Obviously, there's a lot more information about this, and it's a lot easier to access because of the internet. You can watch this episode of the brain injury discussion, but you can also find a lot of information on this. So, and it's so available. But we should also consider that the brain is still developing even into the person's 20s. So your brain really isn't fully developed until at least like 25. And you remember, what is the legal age for drinking? 21. Why is it not 18? Because your brain is still developing. And ideally, you probably don't want to be drinking alcohol if your brain is developing. It might have an adverse effect on the developing brain, even if it is past that legal age. So, again, caution is always warranted, and just know before you actually do something. So, we talked about the youth, so let's talk about the older adults here. Let's talk about more seasoned and more experienced adults. So, adults. So, again, prevention is not always practical for someone who's been doing this when they get that color of hair, or they're like me and have less hair right there. But prevention might not always be practical, but this is becoming more prevalent, um, especially above the age of 55. And again, this is um, not just to harp on the youth thing, but this is something that might have been prevented. Um, or it could be that, maybe it wasn't corrected or mitigated. And so obviously might be showing up in those large, elderly populations. Um, and so let's talk about how to do this, how to fix not just the young problems where we involve the family, where we involve um, the friends and get that education on board, but also with the elderly, or more seasoned, if you want to be very nice about it. You want to give them the information, but you also want to get their peers involved, maybe get their friends involved. That friend group is important to them. Open communication, talk openly about it. You know, get that feedback. Say, well, I like it when this happens because of, why I consume alcohol. Well, if you're able to reframe the discussion into why do you actually need this, what you really want is the cold drink of water, maybe not a cold drink of beer after you mow the lawn. So those are discussions that maybe we should have, especially with the elderly. And obviously, that kind of leads into the next point because we know that alcohol and brain injury kind of goes together. and it's a known impact or cause. It's toxic to the brain. It inhibits your executive functioning, especially in that frontal lobe. It's bad at all ages. Like again, it's not just bad after you're, before the age of 21. It is bad um, at all ages in life, but it's bad at all ages from birth all the way to the end. And so just because they're the rule of you can only legally get it after the age of 21 doesn't mean that you need to get it. Obviously, it's legal and it's easy to acquire. You go into any gas station, you go into a grocery store, you can find beer. They have ABC stores here in Virginia. You can go in there and buy hard alcohol. You got Wine Plus, you have all these stores that literally sell this stuff en masse. So again, this is easy to acquire, but it's also a recipe for brain injury. And that's kind of my point going forward. It's like all of this might be fun, might be enjoyable, might be tasty, but you should also know that can lead to a brain injury, can lead to some damage. And so when you're going to enjoy any of these, maybe you should think about, okay, am I going to be safe when I do this? Am I going to drink it to a safe level? Am I going to stop myself? All of these are good questions to ask because alcohol can be a very dangerous thing. Obviously, you've heard stories where people's lives were unfortunately taken because of a DUI, and we don't want that to happen. We want to prevent this. But with that being said, that is alcohol and brain injury revisited. Again, sources will be in the description below. Here they are. If you're curious, feel free to leave a comment. Maybe you like to read them. I don't know. But feel free to share this with someone. Obviously, let's prevent brain injuries together. But that'll do it for this episode. You all have a wonderful day.